The whole thing started because I opened my big mouth while holding a leaking trash bag. Not exactly the beginning of a great love story, I know. I was standing in the hallway of our apartment building at 6:40 on a Friday morning, barefoot, half awake, and losing a battle with coffee grounds dripping onto my sweatpants when my neighbor, Claire Bennett, stepped out of 4B with a suitcase. A big suitcase. The kind people use when they are either leaving for Europe or finally done with everybody's nonsense. She had sunglasses pushed up in her dark hair, a wrinkled linen shirt, and the expression of a woman who had slept 3 hours and decided politeness was no longer worth the effort. I'm Ryan Mercer, 32, and I work as a radio producer for a local morning show in Nashville. My whole job is making other people sound interesting before sunrise, which means by the time I get home most days, I have just enough charm left to apologize to my microwave. Claire was 29, a graphic designer, and the quietest storm I'd ever lived next to. For 8 months, our relationship had been built on hallway nods, borrowed phone chargers, and one dramatic incident where I killed a spider in her bathroom, while she stood on the toilet holding a shampoo bottle like a weapon. After that, she started calling me Spider-Man, but only when she was tired enough to forget she was supposed to be cool. That morning, she looked at my leaking trash bag and said, "You know there are easier ways to move out." "I'm not moving out," I said. "I'm giving the hallway a breakfast." Her mouth twitched. That was Claire's version of a standing ovation. Then I noticed her suitcase again. "Vacation?" I asked. She looked down at it like she'd forgotten she was dragging half her closet. "No. Work trip got canceled. I already took the days off, so now I'm going nowhere with luggage." That sounds like my last 3 relationships. This time she actually laughed, quick and surprised, and something in my chest did a small, stupid flip. I should mention I hadn't taken a real vacation in 4 years. My sister had given me a guilt lecture so powerful that I'd finally booked a small beach cottage outside Wilmington for a week. Ocean view, screened porch, 2 bedrooms. Because the place was cheaper than the studio cabins and I told myself space was healthy, I was leaving that afternoon. So I said it. Because I was tired. Because she looked sad. Because sometimes loneliness makes a man confuse sarcasm with bravery. "Well," I said, lifting the trash bag away from my leg, "come with me." Claire blinked. "What?" "I'm heading to the beach after work. You've got luggage. I've got a rental cottage, very efficient. We'll tell people we planned it." I waited for her to roll her eyes. I waited for her to say, "In your dreams, Spider-Man." I waited for anything normal. Instead, Claire looked at me for a long second, the hallway humming around us, and said, "Okay." I laughed once. She didn't. My laugh died so fast it should have had a chalk outline. "Okay, as in, funny okay?" I asked. "Okay, as in, I'll go." The trash bag chose that moment to drip something cold onto my foot. I stared at her. "Claire, I was joking." "I know." She lifted her chin, but her voice went softer. "I'm not." There are moments when a man's brain opens 17 tabs and all of them freeze. Mine included. Is she serious? Is this a trap? Did I clean my car? Do I own decent swim trunks? Does she think I'm safe? Is that good or insulting? Before I could say any of them, the elevator dinged. Mrs. Alvarez from 4A stepped out, took one look at me barefoot with garbage juice on my ankle, Claire with her suitcase, and smiled like she'd been waiting years for this exact episode. "Well," she said, "it's about time." Claire's cheeks turned pink. Mine probably did too, but I was too busy pretending I hadn't just accidentally invited the prettiest woman in the building to spend a week at the beach with me. I cleared my throat. "We're not vacation," Claire said quickly. Mrs. Alvarez's smile widened. "Of course." The elevator doors closed behind her, but not before she gave me a wink that made me want to move to another state. Claire looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time since I'd known her, the guardedness slipped. "I need to get away," she said, "and I don't want to go alone." That should have been where I acted like a mature adult and discussed boundaries. Instead, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my sister appeared on the screen. "Please tell me you're not going on that sad little vacation by yourself." Claire read it before I could tilt the phone away. Then she met my eyes and said, "So, am I saving you, or are you saving me?" I told Claire I'd pick her up at 3. Then I spent the next 8 hours behaving like a man who had invited a near stranger on vacation, and only later realized vacations involved things like proximity, pajamas, and the possibility of seeing someone eat shrimp with their hands. At work, I was useless. Our morning host, Dave, noticed immediately. "You look weird," he said through the studio glass during a commercial break. "I always look weird." "No, this is different. This is panic with hair gel. I accidentally invited my neighbor to the beach." Dave slowly lowered his coffee. "Accidentally?" "As a joke." "And she said yes?" "Yes." "Is she attractive?" I thought about Claire in the hallway, suitcase in hand, trying to look brave and failing just enough to make me want to be careful with her. "That's not the point," I said. Dave grinned. "So, yes." By noon, the story had spread to our traffic reporter, our intern, and the guy who fixed the vending machine. Everyone had advice. "Separate bedrooms," said Tina from traffic. "Obviously," I said. "Don't say obviously like you're offended. Say it like you respect women." "I do respect women." "Then stop sweating." By the time I got home, I had changed shirts twice, bought road snacks that made me look both fun and responsible, and vacuumed my car with the intensity of a crime scene technician. Claire was waiting outside our building at 2:57. Same suitcase, white sneakers, denim jacket, hair down now falling over one shoulder. She held a paper cup of coffee in each hand. "I brought you one," she said. "You didn't have to." "I know, that's why it's nice." I took it, and for some reason that simple sentence landed harder than it should have. We loaded her suitcase into the trunk beside mine. There was an awkward pause when we both reached for the passenger door handle, as if the car itself required a ceremony. Claire broke it. "Should we make rules?" "Yes," I said too quickly. "Great. Love rules." She slid into the passenger seat. "Rule 1. If this gets weird, we say it gets weird." "Agreed." "Rule 2. Separate rooms." "Already booked." "Rule 3. No pretending we know each other better than we do." That one made me glance at her. She looked out the windshield. "People do that when they travel. They speed things up." "Okay," I said. "No speeding." She nodded. I started the car. 5 minutes later, she said, "Also, if you snore, I get to smother you with a decorative pillow." "Fair." The first hour was careful. We talked about safe things, work, the building's terrible plumbing, Mrs. Alvarez and her surveillance-level knowledge of everyone's business. Then, somewhere past the Tennessee line, the road stretched out, the sky opened, and Claire took off her sunglasses. "I was supposed to go to Atlanta," she said. "For the work trip?" She nodded. "Client presentation, big one. I built the whole campaign. Then yesterday my boss called and said he was taking it instead." "Ouch!" "Not just taking it, presenting it as his." I tightened my hands on the steering wheel. "Seriously? Welcome to design." "You didn't say anything?" She smiled without humor. "I said several things, professionally, which means nobody listened." I didn't know what to say that wouldn't sound like a bumper sticker, so I went with honesty. "That's awful." Her shoulders lowered a little. "Yeah." A few miles passed. "My ex works there too," she added. There it was. The suitcase suddenly made more sense. "Ah," I said. "Ah is right. Bad breakup? Quiet breakup. Those are worse. No big fight, no shattered plates, just two people slowly becoming strangers while sharing a Netflix account." I nodded like I understood because unfortunately I did. "My last relationship ended because she said being with me felt like waiting for a bus that never came," I said. Claire turned toward me. "That is oddly specific." She was a poet. Was she good? At leaving? Incredible. Claire laughed and the car felt warmer. By the time we stopped for gas, the rules had loosened around the edges. Not broken, just softened. Inside the gas station, Claire inspected snacks with alarming seriousness. "You can tell a lot about a person by their road trip food," she said. "I got pretzels, water, and peanut M&Ms. Stable, a little repressed." "What does yours say?" She placed sour gummy worms, barbecue chips, and a bottle of iced coffee on the counter. "That you're a raccoon with a deadline." She smiled at the cashier like I'd complimented her. Back in the car, rain started tapping the windshield. Claire curled one leg under her, holding the gummy worms between us like a peace offering. Somewhere in North Carolina, my phone buzzed with a call from my sister. I put it on speaker without thinking. "Ryan," she said, "tell me you made it on the road." "I made it on the road." "Alone?" Claire's eyes widened. I panicked and said nothing. My sister gasped. "Oh my gosh, there's a woman." Claire leaned toward the phone. "Hi, I'm Claire. I'm saving him from a sad little vacation." There was one beat of silence. Then my sister said, "I love her." My sister Julia loved Claire for the entire remaining 12 minutes of the call. She loved her job, her voice, her snack choices, and especially the fact that she had forced Ryan to interact with another human being near an ocean. "I wasn't forced," I said. "You were spiritually forced," Julia replied. Claire covered her mouth, laughing silently. When the call ended, she looked at me. "Your sister is intense. She teaches kindergarten. Her whole personality is crowd control. She worries about you." I kept my eyes on the wet road. "She thinks I work too much." "Do you?" "Yes." That answer came out faster than I expected. Claire didn't pounce on it. She just nodded and offered me a gummy worm. We reached Wilmington after dark when the streets were slick and glowing under streetlights. The cottage was 20 minutes beyond town, tucked near a quiet strip of beach with dunes on one side and weathered houses on stilts. The rental looked smaller than the photos, because rentals always do, but it had blue shutters, a crooked porch swing, and the ocean making a steady hush beyond the dark. For the first time all day, neither of us spoke. Then Claire whispered, "Oh." Just that, but I felt it too. Inside, the cottage smelled like lemon cleaner and old wood. There was a tiny kitchen, a living room with a faded striped couch, and a wall of windows facing the black outline of the water. I found the bedrooms down a narrow hall. One had a queen bed, the other had bunk beds shaped like a pirate ship. Claire stepped in behind me, looked at the wooden ship wheel attached to the top bunk, and slowly turned to me. "You said 2 bedrooms. This is a bedroom. This is a lawsuit with pillows." I stared at the pirate bedding. The listing said second bedroom. The listing was written by a criminal. "I'll take the bunks," I said. "Ryan." "I'm serious. I've always wanted to be captain." She leaned against the doorframe. "You're too tall." "I'll adapt." Men have crossed oceans. Not in a twin bed with a mast. We stood there, overtired and trying not to laugh too loudly, in a house that suddenly felt very small. Finally, Claire said, "We'll figure it out tomorrow. Tonight, Captain, pick your ship." I saluted her, which made her roll her eyes, but she was smiling when she dragged her suitcase into the queen room. I changed in the bathroom and climbed into the lower bunk, knees bent, listening to the wind press against the windows. 10 minutes later, there was a soft knock on the door. "You alive?" Claire asked. "Define alive." She pushed the door open. She changed into gray sweatpants and an oversized black t-shirt, her hair braided loosely over one shoulder. Without makeup, without her hallway armor, she looked younger, softer, more dangerous, honestly. "The heater is making a clicking sound," she said. "Is that normal?" "Probably. Probably. I'm a radio producer, not a furnace priest." She hugged her arms around herself. "I hate sleeping in new places." That changed the shape of the moment. I sat up carefully and hit my head on the top bunk. Claire winced. "Oh no." "I'm fine," I lied, holding my forehead. "I came for reassurance and found natural selection." She sat on the edge of the bunk, close enough that I could smell mint toothpaste and rain in her hair. For a while we listened to the heater click. Then she said, "I almost didn't come." "I almost didn't let you." Her eyes flicked to mine. "That sounded bad," I added. "I mean, I was worried it was impulsive for both of us." "It was." "Yeah. But staying home felt worse." She rubbed her thumb over the hem of her shirt. "My ex, Mason, texted me this morning, said he hoped I wasn't being dramatic about the Atlanta thing." I felt my jaw tighten. Wow. He has this way of making me feel like my reaction is the problem, not what happened. That's not a way. That's a talent for being terrible. Claire looked at me, and the smallest laugh escaped her. You say things like you're joking, but you mean them. Occupational hazard. Her gaze held mine a second too long. The heater clicked again, louder this time, and we both jumped. Claire stood. Okay, I'm going back before I say something embarrassing. Like what? She paused in the doorway. For one heartbeat, I thought she might answer. Instead, she said, Good night, Spider-Man. The door clicked shut. I lay back in my pirate bunk, forehead throbbing, ocean whispering outside, and realized the rules were already in trouble. The next morning, I woke to sunlight, gulls, and Claire screaming from the kitchen. I bolted down the hall so fast I nearly took the ship wheel with me. She stood on a chair pointing at the counter. A tiny crab sat beside the coffee maker. Claire looked at me, horrified. I looked at the crab. The crab raised one claw like it had also paid for the cottage. I sighed. I'm starting to think this vacation has a theme. The crab and I stared at each other like two men who had both made poor lodging choices. Claire, still on the chair, whispered, Is it poisonous? It's a crab. That's not an answer. It's not poisonous. Are you sure? No, but I'm trying to project leadership. The crab scuttled half an inch toward the toaster. Claire gasped like it had pulled a knife. I grabbed a mixing bowl from the cabinet and approached with the caution of a bomb technician. The crab raised both claws, which felt personal. Listen, I told it, I don't want trouble. Claire said, Why are you negotiating? Because he has weapons. After 3 failed attempts, 1 yelp from me and Claire shouting, Use your knees. For reasons neither of us understood, I trapped the crab under the bowl. We slid a cutting board beneath it and carried the tiny hostage outside. At the edge of the dunes, I lifted the bowl. The crab fled toward freedom. Claire climbed down from the porch chair she had apparently brought outside for safety and applauded. My hero, she said. You say that now, but I screamed once. Twice. We made coffee after inspecting every cabinet like raccoons might be hiding in the mugs. Then we took our cups to the porch. Morning had made the beach soft and silver. The ocean rolled in slow, patient lines. Claire tucked her feet under her on the swing, and for a while we didn't talk. It was the first silence between us that didn't feel like a gap to fill. Eventually she said, I forgot what it felt like to not be bracing for something. I looked over. She kept her eyes on the water. At work, with Mason, even at home sometimes. Like I'm always waiting for the next little comment, the next disappointment. I wanted to say something useful. Instead I said, I'm sorry. She nodded. Me too. After breakfast, we walked along the shore. Claire collected shells with the seriousness of an archaeologist. I carried her sandals because she claimed pockets were a conspiracy against women. By noon, she had relaxed enough to tease me about my sunscreen technique. You missed your left shoulder. I did not. You have one confident lobster patch. I twisted around to look and she laughed so hard she had to sit in the sand. That afternoon, rain rolled in again, sudden and heavy. We ran back to the cottage soaked and breathless, leaving wet footprints across the floor. Claire stood in the living room, hair dripping, t-shirt clinging to her shoulders and said, Well, this is romantic in a movie, but in real life, I am damp and irritated. I can make soup. You can? I can heat soup. Important distinction. We changed into dry clothes and ate tomato soup from mismatched mugs while a storm grumbled over the roof. The power flickered twice, then died completely. Claire froze with her spoon halfway to her mouth. No, she said. It'll come back. The cottage answered by going darker. I found candles in a drawer and lit them. The whole room turned gold and shadowy. Rain hammered the windows. The ocean sounded closer than before. Claire sat cross-legged on the couch with a blanket around her shoulders. This is how every horror movie starts. No, horror movies start when people split up. We won't split up. So, if there's a noise in the basement, we don't have a basement. That's what the basement wants you to think. I laughed and she smiled into her mug. We played cards by candlelight. She beat me 3 times and accused me of letting her win. I'm competitive, I said. If I were letting you win, I'd be nobler about it. You do seem like a sore loser. I am a layered loser. Later, the game was forgotten. The candles burned low, the rain softened. Claire looked at me over the edge of her blanket. Can I ask you something too personal? Rule 1 says yes if it gets weird. Why did you book a two-bedroom cottage for just yourself? I rubbed the back of my neck. Because I thought maybe if I had extra room, my life would feel less empty. Her face changed, teasing gone. I stared at the candle between us. That sounded sadder out loud. It sounded honest. I'm not good at stopping, I said. Work is easier than figuring out what I'm missing. And what are you missing? I looked at her. That was the problem. For the first time in years, I knew the answer and didn't trust myself to say it. Before I could dodge, Claire's phone lit up on the coffee table. Mason? His name filled the room like a bad smell. She stared at it until it stopped ringing. Then a text appeared. Don't ignore me. We need to talk about what you told people. Claire's face went pale. What does that mean? I asked. She picked up the phone with unsteady fingers. Another message came in. If you're with some guy to prove a point, it's pathetic. The cottage felt suddenly smaller. Claire stood. I need air. It's pouring. I know. She grabbed her jacket and stepped onto the porch. I followed, stopping in the doorway. Rain misted across the boards. She gripped the railing, breathing hard. I hate that he can still do this, she said. He doesn't get to decide what this is. She turned. And what is this, Ryan? The question hit harder than the storm. I could have said vacation, accident, bad idea. Instead, I stepped into the rain and said, It's starting to matter to me. Claire's eyes searched mine. Then the porch light snapped back on. The power returned, bright and rude, and we both flinched like guilty teenagers. Inside, my phone began ringing. Julia. Claire let out a shaky laugh. I looked at the screen, then at her. She wiped rain from her cheek. You should answer. I did. Julia didn't say hello. She said, Please tell me you are not on the news. My stomach dropped. What? Claire's phone buzzed again. This time the text was from Mrs. Alvarez. Saw a picture online. Is that you and Claire kissing on the beach? Claire and I stared at each other. We didn't kiss, she whispered. Then my sister said, Ryan, why does the internet think you're engaged? The internet thought we were engaged because apparently context is optional. Julia sent me the link while Claire and I stood dripping on the porch. It was a photo from earlier that day, taken by some local beach account. In it, I was kneeling in the sand in front of Claire, holding out my hand. What the caption did not explain was that I had been removing a piece of shell from her sandal. What the caption did say was spotted. Sweet beach proposal before the storm. Claire stared at the picture, then at me, then back at the picture. Well, she said faintly, at least my hair looks good. I started laughing first. I couldn't help it. The whole day, the whole trip, the crab, the pirate bed, Mason's texts, Mrs. Alvarez somehow seeing everything from 3 states away, it all broke loose at once. Claire tried to stay serious. She failed. We stood there in the rain, laughing so hard Julia started yelling through the phone, Ryan, are you engaged or concussed? Neither, I managed. Claire took the phone from me. Hi, Julia, we are not engaged. A pause. Then Julia said, loudly enough for me to hear, Yet? Claire handed the phone back like it had caught fire. The next morning, Claire called her boss. Not Mason. Not to explain herself, not to apologize. Her boss. I sat on the porch with coffee while she paced the sand below, phone to her ear, the ocean wind pulling at her hair. I couldn't hear every word, but I heard enough. My work was presented without my permission. No, I'm not being emotional. Yes, I have documentation. And finally, the sentence that made me sit up straighter. Then consider this my notice. When she came back, her face was pale, but her eyes were bright. I might have just ruined my life, she said. I handed her my coffee. Or started it. She took a shaky sip. That sounds like something from a mug. I'm a producer. I know what plays. She looked out at the waves. I'm scared. Good, I said. Means it matters. She turned to me then, and something quiet passed between us. Not dramatic, not movie music perfect, just real. I don't want this to be a rebound, she said. Me neither. I don't want to rush because the beach is pretty and my life is on fire. Reasonable. And I don't want to go home and pretend this didn't happen. I stood, carefully, like one wrong move might scare the moment off. Then we don't pretend. She stepped closer. What do? We go home, I said. We get coffee in the hallway, we make actual plans, we let it be slow. Claire smiled. No speeding? No speeding. She looked down at my hand, then took it. That was all. No kiss in the rain, no proposal in the sand, just her fingers sliding through mine while the tide came in, and somehow it felt bigger than both. We did kiss eventually. 2 nights later, on the last evening of the trip, after we'd eaten takeout on the porch and watched the sun melt orange into the water. She had sauce on her thumb, I told her. She wiped the wrong hand. I laughed. Then she kissed me like she'd decided to stop asking permission from her own fear. When we got back, Mrs. Alvarez was waiting in the lobby. She looked at Claire, then at me, then at our carefully separate suitcases. No ring? She asked. Claire, without missing a beat, said, He's still on probation. Mrs. Alvarez patted my arm. Good. Builds character. 6 months later, Claire had left the agency behind and started freelancing from a little studio with plants in the window and her name on the door. Mason texted twice. She never answered. I stopped taking every extra shift at the station. Julia cried when I told her I was using my vacation days on purpose. Claire and I still lived in 4A and 4B for a while. We dated like normal people if normal people had a shared history involving viral, fake engagements and seafood break-ins. By the following spring, we went back to the same cottage. The pirate bunk was still there. So was the porch swing. This time, we only booked one bedroom. At sunset, Claire walked ahead of me along the shore, barefoot, laughing as the water chased her ankles. I had a small velvet box in my pocket, not because the internet had predicted it, not because anyone expected it, but because the joke that started everything had become the truest thing in my life. She turned back, hair lit gold by the dying sun, and held out her hand. Coming, Spider-Man? I took her hand first. The ring could wait one more minute. Because before I asked her to come with me forever, I wanted to remember exactly how it felt. The ocean breathing beside us, her palm warm in mine, and the whole wide future opening like a door we were finally brave enough to walk through. So if you ever invite your neighbor on vacation as a joke, be careful. She might say okay, and she might become the person you come home to. What would you have done if something like, I told my neighbor to come on vacation with me as a joke? She said okay before I could laugh, happened to you? And have you ever mistaken kindness for something your heart was too afraid to name? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.